On today's extra special Star Wars Legends lore video, we count down the 5 most powerful Imperial Warlords. Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another episode of Star Wars Top 5. Today we will be talking about one of my favorite topics in Star Wars, the post-Endor Imperial Civil War. In Legends, after the defeat of the Empire and of course the loss of Palpatine along with many others at the Battle of Endor, the Empire splintered into almost countless smaller factions. For a better part of a decade, these factions not only fought against the New Republic, but also frequently jostled against each other, fighting over the same resources and area, and each one more or less hoping to become the emergent Imperial faction. Although the title Warlord did actually exist, albeit rarely within the old Empire, it more often refers to the leaders of these splinter factions. Today we'll be looking at the 5 most powerful of these warlords and thus also the most powerful factions. I'd briefly like to note that Palpatine himself did return from death to lead the Empire's forces in a campaign against the New Republic, which is called Operation Shadow Hand. I won't be considering Palpatine a warlord for the purposes of this list. He more or less had the legal authority of the Empire, and his campaign doesn't really match what we'd expect from an Imperial warlord. Coming in at number 5, we have the Terra Doc Brothers, Truton and Tosh. Throughout their lives, the Terra Docs were incredibly intelligent, but like many warlords, very brash and aggressive. Truton, I think, was the more substantial of the two, playing a major role in the formation of the greater Maldrood faction within the Mid-Rim. The Maldrood, however, was an uneasy partnership between the two brothers, and they both had a role to play. Tosh especially helped the partnership by aggressively trying to capture more space. However, for a while after the Battle of Endor, the Maldrood was seriously limited by their position in the galaxy. They were sandwiched under the territory of Warlord Zsinj, who was extraordinarily powerful. Although Zsinj wasn't particularly aggressive with other Imperial factions, it limited the degree to which they could expand through the galactic north. The heart of the Maldrood was the Crimson Command, which, after the death of Admiral Thrawn, was led by Admiral P Leon. At its height, the Crimson Command was comprised of over 100 Victory-class Star Destroyers, although those were eventually whittled down. The Maldrood was seriously weakened by Operation Shadow Hand, where they heavily invested in the Empire's resurgence. They lost many ships, their territory was split, and this would represent the beginning of the end. Terra Doc was eventually assassinated at the Imperial Reunification Conference by Admiral Nastassi Daala. And after the events at Toss Beacon, the Maldrood ceased being a separate sovereign entity. At number 4, we have Warlord Artus Kane. Kane consolidated power as the Pentastar alignment. The alignment was a relatively small but compact and efficient faction. The most notable thing about Kane was how distinct he was from other warlords. Rather than being aggressive and territorial, he was anti-expansionist, instead hoping to return a purified form of the Empire to his small portion of space. Besides for the Reborn Emperor, the Pentastar alignment was probably the faction which made the most heavy use of the dark side. Notably, Jarek, the Dark Jedi and former Inquisitor of the Empire, was, for a time at least, aligned with the Pentastar alignment, bringing with him many of the Empire's former Dark Jedi and Inquisitors. The Pentastar alignment had substantial military assets. Besides for their Vengeance-class Super Star Destroyer, they also made use of the Reaper, Executor-class SST. Nonetheless, Kane refused to help Thrawn during his reemergence, but did heed the call of Emperor Palpatine. Kane would die during Operation Shadow Hand, and after that, the Pentastar alignment would flounder until being consumed by the Imperial Remnant. At number 3, we have Warlord Zsinj, who, in my opinion, is the most powerful of the pure Imperial warlords based on territory and assets. Zsinj was extremely successful in the first few years after the Battle of Endor. Until his death and the return of Thrawn a year later, I would say that he was probably the second largest force in the Star Wars galaxy. He was intelligent, but at times also ruthless and reckless, carving out a large degree of space. He left the other warlords alone most of the time, probably because their empires were significantly smaller, but frequently fought against the New Republic. Zsinj even struck against a New Republic controlled Quat, one of their most heavily defended planets, and is most well known, I'd say, for his rivalry with Rogue Squadron. Zsinj and his empire really represents the first almost legitimate government on this list. However, he and his dreadnought, the Iron Fist, were eventually destroyed by a combined Hapes Consortium New Republic fleet over the planet Dathomir, with one of his other rivals, Han Solo, firing one of the final shots. At number 2, we have Grand Admiral Thrawn. Thrawn was by far the most intelligent and well-organized of the Imperial Warlords. His focus was on consolidating power, which he did through several strategies. He found and secured a good portion of the Dark Fleet. He assumed what I would call a righteous and legitimate command, with other warlords happily donating their forces to his control. His sheer competence saw a unification which was only matched by the re-emergence of Palpatine. He also actively built new ships and formed a plan to steal New Republic assets from the shipyards of Sluis Von, although the latter was unsuccessful. Thrawn led what seemed to be an untouchable partnership with Jor's Sabayoth, who was the clone of a fallen Jedi Master. The two of them, through the use of Sabayoth's force abilities, the new ships they captured from the Dark Fleet, and Thrawn's unmatched tactical genius, captured a good portion of Republic space, with countless planets falling to his control either willingly or unwillingly. After seriously weakening New Republic High Command, Thrawn planned a final confrontation at the planet of Bilbringi. The New Republic sprung his trap, and even with the combined forces of the Republic fleet and the Smugglers Alliance as led by Talon Karrde, Thrawn was poised to strike a death blow against the New Republic. However, he was, at the last minute, assassinated by his bodyguard Rook, and without his leadership, his forces fell into disorganization and the New Republic won the battle. Thrawn, as a warlord, was by far the closest to defeating the New Republic, and in my opinion, his power and his combined forces were second to only the number 1 faction on this list. Before we get there, however, I'd like to take 1 second to note Izani Isard. Isard was arguably the last of the legitimate Imperial leaders, although even she assumed power by assassinating the Imperial Ruling Council, which was formed after power was removed from Sate Pestage. Isard was known for being the last Imperial leader to control Coruscant and for having in her possession the Super Star Destroyer / prison known as the Lusankya. She would cede a poisoned Coruscant to Rogue Squadron, retreating to Typhera, where she was subsequently defeated. After that, she never really managed to control the same degree of power as the other warlords on this list. 2 individuals share the number 1 spot on this list, Nastassi Daala and Admiral P Leon. Daala and P Leon were, I think, the most powerful of anyone on this list, but also represented an end to the era of Imperial Warlords. I've already talked about P Leon. He was second in command to Thrawn and also served as the leader of the Crimson Command for the Greater Maldrood, although at that point his heart wasn't really into it. Daala, though, really came out of nowhere. She commanded a small fleet which protected the Maw research installation and was totally absent and isolated from the Galactic Civil War. She developed a serious hatred towards the New Republic, feelings which were only worsened by the stealing and eventual destruction of the Sun Crusher, as well as most of her fleet. Daala didn't only hate the New Republic, but she totally despised the pointless bickering between various Imperial warlords, thinking that their best course of action would be to unify so they could successfully fight off the Rebel Alliance together. This was all brought to a head as she visited Blitzer Harsk, who led a small remnant faction known as the Zero Command, which during her visit was attacked by the Crimson Command of the Greater Maldrood. She managed to force a ceasefire between the two factions and would later organize a conference of a dozen major warlords at the time at Toss Beacon. Although she did hope to unify the various factions, throughout the meeting it became clear that this was impossible. After allying herself with Pellaeon, she would assassinate all other warlord leaders, then successfully moving to seize all of their assets, including not only their ships, but also their planets and territory. This gave her control of not only the dredges of the Pentastar alignment in the Greater Maldrood, but also countless other factions which had carved out territory in the power vacuum left by the deaths of Thrawn and the Reborn Emperor. After a failed attack on Luke's Jedi Praxium at Yavin and the loss of her Nighthammer Super Star Destroyer, Daala relinquished command of the unified forces to Admiral P Leon, who would go on to form and lead the Imperial Remnant. The Remnant would continue to seize and secure assets, moving away from the core of the galaxy to the Outer Rim, where they would establish a full-scale government. With at least 3 new Super Star Destroyers, the Dominion, the Megador, and the Reaper, the Remnant would fight against the New Republic for some time. The Remnant was helped by the fact that the Empire, for the first time in a long time, actually had a stable region in the Outer Rim, where they could not only hoard assets, but create new ones. The New Republic at this time was also gaining power, so in an effort to preserve the last bit of the former Empire's glory, he signed the Bastion Accord, which ended formal fighting between the two factions. As I mentioned, this represented the end of an era, not only the Imperial Civil War, but also the greater fight between the Empire and the Republic/Rebel Alliance. Open hostilities really ceased at this point, and the two factions would not only fight together, but join together during the Yuuzhan Vong War. That, however, is a story for a different day. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and enjoyed learning about Imperial Warlords. This era is my favorite of Star Wars, which is why I said at the beginning that this is a very special episode. Let me know what you thought down in the comments, who you would include on this list, and also which Warlord is your favorite, not only of the 5 here, but any of them. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, may the Force be with you.